Okay, now it's on full screen. Thank you very much, Sandra, for introduction, and thank you for organizing this session. I'll focus more a little bit on the theoretical aspects, but I will try to mention here also practices. So to on understanding the relationship between the history and memory of Pax Romana. So I'll start with the history first and a few definitions of the sources of historical knowledge and that this needs to be and how to make such a research, how to approach history, but also memory. History is a systematic study and documentation, and it explores the past, but also the change. And I think the change is where we can focus the most with our movement. That's especially as we had seen in a presentation by Stefan, how much change the movement has brought both to the world and to the church and lay movements in general. Sources of historical knowledge would also be the sources that actually date from the particular time period, but also they need to be understood by we need to understand the limitations of those. But also another aspect of different source of the history could be the oral history. And this is the importance of the project that was undertaken by, for example, in the IMCS movement, on the 100th anniversary of the movement, when young students approached more experienced, but also young leaders from the past of the movement to learn about the important life-changing often moments of their experience in the movement, and recorded those testimonies. This was an eye-opening experience for many of the young people, but also very important for those who had this experience years in the past and could share with the current activists of the student movement. Other materials are those reposited in archives, the documents and records, and this is here comes the project that is led by Anna Maria of approaching all the scattered archives of our movement and making sure that we have a recollection of all available materials, but also that they are properly taken care of and also explored. And of course, the visual documentation, which is partially in the archives, in the official archives, but also nowadays in digital archives of our Facebook and websites, where we have also a lot of the history materials for our movement. But are those materials the truth brokers? Is it something that can be trusted without any consideration, without any filters? So this here comes the memory, and especially we discuss here about about the collective memory, which is the main aspect here, which can be perceived as a sum, as a collection of individual memories, like in the project of the oral history of Pax Romana IMCS, but also here. But also collective memory, as Polish sociologist defines it, is that it refers to the past which is present in the current collective life. She defines it also as a notion that members of the collective have about the group's past and the methods of commemorating and transmitting this knowledge and memory. And she underlines also that this is used as obligatory equipment for the members of the given collective. So keeping this in mind, I'll move to how memory and history interlink, and according to Maurice Halbwachs, collective memory is a living history. It depends on the group it belongs to, but he also underlines that it contrasts with the history, which is perceived more as, in his understanding, as objective picture, as he defines it, as history science. Today, history is more approached as social science, but in the context with collective memory, it will be that the collective memory is a process. First of all, it's not finalized period of time or item. It's a process. It's full of changes and developments, and it describes history in a new manner. Although still it is based in historical facts, it requires selective description of the past especially to understand the context, and the strict selection of historical matter, highlighting some and occasionally exaggerating several others. Social memory is also, I'd like to define here also to refer here to this distinction of the two terms. Social memory, memory of historical events that were experienced by people to whom we can still relate, that's like our grandparents' generation or one in the past. However, if this is something that was much further in the past, that would be referred to as historical memory. We need different methods of learning about it and transmitting this knowledge. And this memory is obviously different to refer to. It could be referred to in different matters, more on values levels and in broader context. And more contextual information needs to be provided also for this type of memory. And here comes the third term that I would like to introduce here, that in my understanding is the outcome of the connection between the memory and history, but also one that links it clearly, is that collective memory is an elementary component of the collective identity. Identity being the sense of who we are as individuals, but also as members of social group, here of our movement. And here I would like to refer to what Gustafsson wrote, is that history enables a person to see themselves as part of the living process of human growth that has emerged out of the past and will inexorably project itself out beyond our lifetime, and that we are the product of the past, but not the complete product. And with a few more quotes, history understood also as a dialogue between the past and the present, where the most important element is to understand the past, to understand the present. And understanding that the identity is shaped in this context, I think it is important to remember that identity is shaped always in the context of the history, but the context could be understood either that we're building upon the achievements of the past or building in the opposition to. But always it is in a broader context, and part of this context is also what I find personally as important element is to understand, for example, the personal motivations of people, especially when I read or when I heard the story of the Pax Romana Congress in 1921, and that it was not not just a year in the past, but also a moment where some of the students and participants of the Congress came after personal experience of the First World War. And some of them also knew themselves from the past Congresses where they represented in more peaceful context their respective national movements. So they had this personal experience, the lived experience, personal memory, that they translated to the well, nowadays history of the movement, with this very strong motivation to act for peace and to overcome the challenges that they were facing. So in the sense, history does not belong to the past, because out of this motivation, we continue the action and motivate. We're so motivated to act, and this forms who we are. This forms the Pax Romana movement. Thank you.